Yeah, this is. It's a great question. I think I see the people and diversity and inclusion side of things more broadly in a way that, and I certainly don't feel like I can speak for India, partly because most of my career was in the U.S. and I've lived here for a few years now, and I can see that women in the workforce is certainly increasing. The number of women in the workforce are increasing, but as far as my understanding goes, it still skews quite heavily towards men. Um, and I think there is a sense of optimism that shift will continue in time. I have seen, and this is anecdotal, so I don't have data around it, but I do notice that there are more women who are involved in roles related to sustainability and circular economy. At least on LinkedIn, I get that sense that there are more of them from India. I can't say validated one way or the other. And on the other side, I think, and thank you for bringing this up too, Mark. From a people perspective, I think the danger sometimes I feel is that it's easy to get lost in the technicalities of how all of this is playing out, and sort of zooming out again, looking at it from a life cycle perspective. The choices that we make in terms of the products that are being designed and purchased and the materials that are being sourced, they often come from different parts of the world, and there are direct implications to people that live in those parts of the world, and the negative externalities that emerge by virtue of a take, make, throw away economy, right? And invariably, this is sort of the intersection of ethics or environmental justice and sustainability, where why should those who are at a disadvantage bear the brunt of the outcomes of a system that is inherently flawed in some senses? And I think that's an important piece to keep in mind from the standpoint of the outcomes that we can achieve, right? It's not just circularity for the sake of it, but what does this mean from the standpoint of the impacts that those that are in places either dealing with the sort of aftermath of a linear economy or affected by the extraction of resources from where they live and the aftermath of that. I think that's an important piece of the consideration, again, which tends to be a bit invisible from the perspective of the consumer, but I think is crucial from the standpoint of design and going forward. Not just product design, but the way we think of our economy and business model.
No, thank you, Rajiv and Yorien and David. I think this is why I brought it up, and thanks for shedding light on that too, Rajiv. This point around, I really do see people as the connective tissue here in many ways to circularity, as a generalization and a point of view from where I sit. Having spent years before and some time in applied research, we often focus on technology and the enabling tools and technologies, and we get enamored and immersed with the how in terms of bringing forward new products, extending life, dealing with product stewardship, all the interests here around sustainability and circularity. And oftentimes the intention in policy is fraught with its own definition and nomenclature of a language unto itself that is a specialty, also important. But the underlying fabric of all that, as Rajiv was aptly pointing out, and again, as a point of view, is the people factor, the side that, social change. And as we look at, the opportunity for circularity, it's not just the product life cycle and the linear focus on the enterprise. It's that point that David brought up earlier around the Lighthouse Initiative, going outside the fence. Making sure that we're capturing the health, wellness, vitality of humans, at all facets of the experience, so to speak, and not taking for granted where they may lie within that life cycle of a product as well. I had come across this. I know a lot of companies are going through strategic repositioning or new initiatives around circularity and sustainability. I had come across recently, and this may be out there for some time, but I saw Unilever and what I believe they called their Compass Initiative. But they had 3 very succinct bullet points: improving health of planet, improving people's health, confidence, and well-being, and contributing to a fairer and more socially inclusive world. Being a study of sustainability and practitioner as well, I look at these as in many ways not necessarily anything new, but I do think that there's a importance to how words are stated and the prioritization that's given to them. Improving health of planet, I think, is an anchor there, that a lot of companies will continue to have and have had for a long time. But when I look at their following two, and the emphasis is they reorient themselves towards this notion of people and this continuity or connective tissue to a better world, improving people's health, confidence, and well-being. I think that's interesting, as well as a fairer, more socially inclusive world. So, they're clearly thinking through, and they're not the only one, the context of their products, their innovation, and how it impacts the world broadly, not just the linear delivery of design through product experience with the consumer, but certainly with the communities in which they work with, where they source product and material from, as well as those that are contributing to, the full life cycle of their products in other ways. So I think that clarity and purpose that's getting brought into organizations during this time is important. And I think it's also bringing forward new skill sets, again, to generalize a little bit, but, there's new skills that are being required to help organizations orient themselves in this new economy. And I, for one, being a adjunct professor at a school of management, see the promise of the students and the way that they orient themselves to the topics that we've talked about today. I think it's a very promising future in many ways, because I see an inherent understanding and desire to improve the world. But I don't necessarily see the calibration of education in the image of where our youth are, as an example. So, and that's not just at the university in which I'm a part of. I think that's broader than that. I think what I'm trying to express is that I think that there's still a calibration that needs to happen amongst how we train people for future jobs, and also the types of skills that are being brought forward in the image of this more inclusive and world that's being mindful of people's health and wellness, and offering that level of awareness and education so that we can, truly accomplish those goals or objectives, if you will. Perhaps
this has already been a part a while ago. I'm not that old, and it has not been that long since I quit my school. There also sustainability, well-being of people, those kind of things was included in my education. I did a management education, and that was included in there as well. So that was already about 6 years ago or something.
That's terrific. That's great. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I like the Unilever statements. I think they remind me of the Sustainable Development Goals and being very high-level drivers for what are we about. So it's very good. I agree with that. And then practically, where do you see evidence of those expressions turning into actual actions on the ground? I'll give you one little example. So Michelin, who the French mostly tire company, mobility company we'll call them, they run a conference called Moving On, MOVIN apostrophe on, Moving On. And the other day they had an enormous number of people on a conference call for 700 odd people. Wow. And they have the confidence to stop and say, well, we've done enough talking, now let's do some yoga, because we need to remind ourselves, let's ground ourselves, just remind ourselves who we are, breathe deeply, and then come back. They did that twice during the conference. It was most unusual, very professional, and I thought a nice way of reminding ourselves we're not just about resource efficiency, we're about a more holistic view of life. Just one little example, I think, of trying to make those high-level statements into something practical, meaningful every day.
I like the example indeed. You see it more often now that people need to stretch for a couple of minutes during during the meetings. That's great. Also, I wanted to point out another, I see that we only have 4 minutes of time, so we'll do it quickly. Another thing is looking at people. I know that within the remanufacturing industry, and for example, also in the workshops, remanufacturing companies are really looking for personnel. They don't have that well-educated personnel. They find it difficult to look for these people. So also maybe in this webinar, like if you are interested to work in this industry, do not hesitate to please come on board.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's wonderful.
You've given, thank you, David, also for your example. You've given me some ideas here. So the next time we do one of these, maybe we'll squeeze in a 10-minute meditation break.
Yes, I was just thinking that, Rajiv. We should do that, our own moment here.
Yes.
But we covered a lot of ground today, and I want to thank each of you. And before, I think we near closing out, I do have one additional thought, if we're willing to think about it. As you look at the year ahead, is there one thing on your mind that you're really looking forward to, whether it's a personal anecdote, one that's tied to industry, a goal or objective? Is there, give us a sense of what you're thinking about as the year comes together here for you. And I'm happy to give mine.
Wow, yeah. I must say for us, it's of course still a kind of a difficult year because of COVID-19. We are not able to host any events, so it has been a strange 1.5 year, or now a year, and the end of the year, 2 years for us. So we had to move Rematec from 2021, that was actually going to take place in June. We had to move it to 2022. However, we are going to organize an online exhibition in May, 20th of May, where I'm very much looking forward to. However, it's completely different business than we are used to. But however, with this webinar, we are trying to make more noise within the industry, so create that awareness and make the end user more aware of remanufacturing, but also trying to create more networking possibilities within the industry, because I think that's quite important, especially with all the changes that are going on.
That's great. Thank you, Yorien.
And for me, I would say, first and foremost, I'm looking forward to the way in which the Sustainable Products Initiative is implemented in the EU. So we'll be contributing a lot to this, I think, a glorious opportunity to help the remanufacturing sector to be able to be part of the Sustainable Products Initiative. So very exciting next 12 months in that area. And then in a very much more simple way, I'm so much looking forward to going to Madrid to see our son, who moved there a year ago, because all we ever do is Zoom him in Madrid. I see the blue skies while I'm under the rain of Brussels. I think, I just need to get there. So I want to do that soon.
Well, best of luck as you have the opportunity, hopefully, to get there.
Yeah, and very quickly, I'm gonna follow David's example here. I'm actually quite looking forward to some personal travel, especially making a trip stateside and catching up with friends and family there. And from the perspective of where we go from here, especially here in India with Recreate, I think it's a very exciting journey ahead. I think we have a lot of ground to cover, in that there is, the awareness pieces that Yorien talked about are certainly going to be front and center early on, but I'm optimistic and very hopeful that we get past that sooner rather than later and start thinking about and actualizing tangible, whether they're policy interventions, whether they're the bringing together of stakeholders within the private sector to really do more with circularity and enabling remanufacturing to emerge as something that is more mainstream, not something that's a discussion that's happening in the shadows and in the corner. So that really kind of excites me, especially after the conversation that emerged yesterday. So, yeah. Thank you for the question.
Yes, and thank you all again. I know we covered, global perspectives in a lot of different ways, and I'm really quite delighted to have had the opportunity to speak with each of you today. Each of you are doing tremendous things, and my goal for the year ahead, quite frankly, is to do more of this. I think the nexus of conversation between people who are out there and leading the way and having really thoughtful, deliberate time to chat and think about where we've been and where we're going. Just means a great deal. I learned a lot today. I hope you guys enjoyed the experience too, and wish everyone well for the year ahead. Best wishes, and I know we'll speak again soon. So, best of luck, and we'll enjoy the day here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, David.
Well done.
Appreciate you coming on. Take care.
Bye all.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.